listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box, where you get the inside scoop on the steps action takers and decision makers take to align their purpose to their principles and achieve their goals in business and life. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. Each week, you'll hear from remarkable guests who have overcome challenges and obstacles to succeed in the face of adversity. By listening to their stories, you'll get practical tips, tools, and resources you can implement today to bust through your own internalized prisons of worry and doubt. And now, without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hey there, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of the No Labels, No Limits podcast, a podcast all about shedding limiting labels and beliefs so we can live our dreams and shine our lights out into the world. I'm Sarah Box, your host, and this week we are joined by Paige Risley. Now, Paige is the co-founder and co-CEO of We Recruit Well. She and her business partner collectively have 20 plus years of experience recruiting remote team members, which is that experience level in today's world is super important. She has 17 years of teaching experience, which actually helps her to communicate with and support those she serves through We Recruit Well. And she continues to grow herself. She's currently reading The 9 Types of Leaders by Beatrice Chestnut and Atomic Habits by James Clear. Haven't read Atomic Habits yet, but the other one I have, and it's really good. And not to be outdone, she invests in her own professional development and works with a financial coach, Michele Williams. Paige lives in Lake Oconee, is that right?
Lake Oconee.
Oconee. I figured I was close. I've got to get to Georgia. I just am not doing well with names. So that is in Georgia's Lake Country, and she has a husband and 2 boxers. They also have 2 sons, 1 daughter-in-law, and an adorable grandson. That sounds like a pretty cool life, Paige.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Well, she likes spending time at the beach, at the lake, and with family and friends. And you kind of get the picture of where she lives and what she does, that those are priorities. But today I'm going to ask Paige to share with us how to make sure our team is the right fit and that you can work effectively together. And I'm going to ask some questions more about how she uses the Enneagram in her workplace, about teams in general, especially bridging remote and on-site folks, and then how to effectively work and communicate with the different Enneagram types at work. So with that introduction, let's welcome our guest today, Paige Risley. Hi, Paige.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. I was telling Paige before we went live that I had a dentist visit this morning, and clearly my mouth has not come back to normal yet. But it's a great day for an interview. Paige, most of my guests know this, and they know they'll be asked this question. I just popped this on to you at the last minute, but I like to know if there's anything you do every day that really keeps you living true to your own purpose and calling.
Yeah, definitely. I tend to be a very structured person. I like to stick to my to-do list and mark things off. And something that kind of keeps me focused and keeps me that way, I just maintain a regular workout schedule. I get up early every day, and I take that time for myself, to take care of myself. I go for a run, a walk, I do my workout. And I also like to read a lot. Like you shared, I am currently reading a couple books right now. And I just feel that helps me be a better version of myself, as well as it helps me help my clients and the candidates that we're placing with them in my business as well.
Fabulous. So let me ask you this. If you were to hop on an elevator and do your elevator speech, not necessarily of your business yet, but if someone popped on and they said, what is the Enneagram? What would you say? And let me say, you got 15 floors. This is not a long elevator.
15 floors. First of all, I wouldn't be on the elevator because I'm claustrophobic. So we'd be on the stairs walking, but
so you have more time.
I've got a little more time, but yeah. So the Enneagram, I would describe the Enneagram as it's a personality. It's a personality assessment. It's just, there's all kinds of them out there, but this one it doesn't box you in. There's 9 different types that you can be. And within those 9 types, you have different wings and you have different subtypes and you have different growth paths and different stress paths and all the different things. So you're not narrowed down into that one type, whereas a lot of them you are, and that it can serve you well to know what you are, what your tendencies are, so that you can work on the blind spots, work on the parts of you that need that work, and also begin to recognize in others how you can communicate better with them.
So tell us a little bit about We Recruit Well, and how you and your partner started that, because that's a very specific type of recruiting.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is. We actually, my partner and I, we've known each other for over 20 years now. We met as teachers. We actually transitioned out of the teaching world into the virtual assistant workspace at the same time. And we were just looking for something. We didn't want to be in the classroom anymore. You hear teachers get burned out. It happens a lot. It happened to both of us. We wanted something we could work from home. And we found the virtual assistant workspace. And we started with the same company. And then we both joined that company on their corporate team. I joined the company in a recruiter space and was actually recruiting virtual assistants for them and hiring them for the company and then placing them with clients. My partner joined as a relationship manager. And so she was navigating the relationships between clients and their virtual assistant and helping them navigate their workspace and their communication style. We worked for that company I was there for 5-6 years. We both felt there was a better way. Everybody knows what a virtual assistant is now, especially with the pandemic. Most of the virtual assistant companies out there are subscription model, and we're not. We don't manage the middle for very long. You pay them, you contract with them, you can be a 1099 with them, W-2, however you want. But what we do is we go out and specifically find somebody for you. We're not finding someone on our roster. We're meeting with you, listening to what your needs are, what your business is, and then we're creating a job description, posting it, and finding a specific person for you. So that's in a nutshell, that's how we got started. We just knew there was a different model. There was a better way to do it that was a little more cost effective for a client, and it's more pay effective for the virtual assistant as well.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I love about that model is you took time to know the client's needs and what the virtual assistant could do for them. That's actually the model that helped me find, well, she's been with me for 5 years now. She's her own business, but oh my gosh, it was so great because it was like, this is specifically what I need. And I'm hopeful that you get someone who's smarter than that so they can help me grow.
Yes. Yep.
But it's been great. So how do you think your personal type on the Enneagram, you're a 1 with a wing 9, how do you think that influences currently or influenced your decision previously to this choice of work and the approach that you have?
Yeah. If you know anything about the Enneagram and you're a 1, you're a rule follower. You check things off. You are going to do what you're supposed to do. I love processes. I love SOPs, the whole bit. And I can just go down the list and get it done. That's how my days are. And I like to just move right through. And so as far as our business is concerned, I am that analytical process person. I am the person who I know what you're supposed to do. My business partner is an 8. Her wing, I don't really know what her wing is. I don't know if she's a wing 9 or a wing 7. She could really go either way, but she is an 8. And there are many times I have to reach out and say, Beth, you forgot to do this. And she's like, oh, okay. And she never goes back and does it. So I always have to fill in that gap for her. But that structure part of me, that wanting to follow the rules, wanting to get it done right, the perfectionist, it really lends itself towards being an executive assistant. But also, I know what I'm looking for. And being in a recruiter and being in this space, you have to follow that process. And every time we've not followed that process, it's when we've made mistakes. We've messed up. We did something. We didn't do it right. We got out of order. So it lends itself very well to what I do. The Wing 9 part, I am definitely not a confrontational person. I would rather just, my business partner calls me, a high 8 wannabe. I don't have it. I'd love to have your back in a fight, but I'm going to talk to you about it and get you hyped up, but I'm going to run away when the time comes. And so to me, the conflict, I need to bring it down to a calmer level, and we need to work it out, and we need to fix it before we have the conflict. So it lends itself very well in that communication stage between our clients and any assistant that we would place with them, is that we're teaching them to communicate ahead of time so you don't reach that boiling point of a conflict.
That's so powerful, because I think in my many years working and causing trouble for myself, right? Because there are those things you're going, had I started this conversation a month ago, we wouldn't be having today's conversation.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
But I only get those because I'm not you. So I get those in hindsight, and I'm thinking, I really need a better way of doing this. So I appreciate that, but I can also see how that part of you that doesn't want to be confrontational thinks about those things.
Yes.
And kind of dials it down, which is so powerful to have in a business. So let's talk a little bit about how we can use the Enneagram in the workplace, whether we're recruiting or on a day-to-day basis.
Yep. That's actually how I got introduced to the Enneagram, was in a workspace, in a team. And I had been on the team for a good 3 years. We had several new people that had joined. The company had merged 2 divisions. And so they merged 2 teams together that did the same thing. So there was a new leader, and there were some new team members that hadn't worked together. And kind of as a get to know you professional development, we all read The Road Back to You by Ian Crone, and we took an Enneagram test, and then we all got together and discussed it. And it really was eye-opening. I mean, I've done all kinds of personality assessments and work style assessments before, and they're all spot on with me. They all label me exactly the same, and that's exactly what I am. But it was the Enneagram went even a step further, and it really was able to show us even about ourselves what we needed to work on. But it also really opened my eyes. Like for example, there was somebody on the team that I just did not like. Didn't like her, didn't want to get along with her, didn't care. And through that Enneagram process, I realized why. And, my Enneagram number just doesn't mesh with hers. We were just in 2 total different people. But, even though I really never probably would have been best friends with her, it taught me, or it showed me how I needed to communicate with her and what I could do different or what I could do better. And that's how we got involved. That's how I learned about the Enneagram. And I just loved it and have been learning more about it ever since. In our business, we utilize the Enneagram. We always ask our candidates and our clients, have you ever taken a personality test? If so, which one? And we just kind of go by whatever they've done. They haven't taken one. We have a few, we can send a link to them depending on which ones we think they more fall into. So that's kind of how we use it. We do the same with our candidates. And then, we can use that information as we're introducing them and they're getting to know each other. We can offer suggestions on, hey, how best to communicate with each other, how you can work together. We, especially with a virtual assistant, we can really give a lot of insight into them. Hey, remember, your client, your executive, your leader, they're an 8 or they're a 9 or, they're a 4. Here's some ways you can communicate with them. Here are some things you can try. We recently had one who, I don't even think he was so all over the place. I don't think we ever really kind of nailed down which one we thought he might be. But because we had a little bit of insight into him, we were able to give that assistant, hey, you're never going to reach him by email. Stop emailing him. Text him. And don't use words, use emojis. And that did it. There was something about him that he needed the emoji versus words to get his attention. So that's really how we utilize it. It's not just in our placement process. It's in the next step in how best can you guys communicate and work together.
That's really powerful. I love that thing about the emojis, right? I'm working with someone later today, and I went back and looked at her, and I'm thinking, okay, she needs to understand why we're even having this conversation, right? Because otherwise she just wants everything finished.
Yeah.
One can't jump to the end without understanding why. So
you can't.
But I can share that with her. This is why we're doing that. And had I not gone back and looked at like what she needs versus what I need to communicate, but what does she need, it would have been like, we would have still been fine. It wouldn't have been as beneficial.
Yep.
So I want to think about, and as you're talking about team members, I think I wished I would have known this earlier, because there were things like with team members or even family members, like there's just people that they kind of get your back up fast.
Oh, yeah.
And can you give some examples of the different types? So like you identified the team member that got you going. So for the different types, let's assume that people listening to this now have an idea of what their type is. They may not be zeroed in for sure, but what kinds of things might set them off?
You mean for each
or a few
different type?
Like,
okay. Yeah.
Clearly, you know the ones really well. You probably know the eights really well.
I know the ones and the eights really well. For ones, I'll start with ones. For ones, if you get out of process or you don't follow the rules, you are pushing my buttons. And, like last week, my brother lives in Dallas, Texas, and his pickup truck was stolen from his work parking spot with his name on it. And my thought was, why can't people just follow the rules? What's wrong with people? You don't do that. That's just a big no-no. So if you get out of process, go in order. There's a list for a reason. There's a work process and a workflow for a reason. Just do it. So that is one thing that really sets me off. I think another thing for ones is if you're going to do it right. I want my bed made a certain way. And when my husband wants to get up and make the bed and help, that's great, but do it the right way.
You go back and redo it?
You know what? I didn't today. He does not make the bed very often. So I try not whenever he does make it. I really trained myself, do not go back and remake the bed. But in my inner self, it really causes tension for me. That the blanket's not in the right spot. Like, you didn't do that right. And it's not about him. It's more about me. So, I mean, those are some things for ones. Eights, I think for eights, they want to have a good conversation with you. They want to have a discussion or debate. And if you got to have an opinion, you got to be able to run with them. Our oldest son is also an 8, and you got to be able to have a discussion. He's also an engineer. So you got to have a discussion with him, and it's got to be intellectual, and you got to keep up. So if you're just, agreeable, that's not what an 8 wants. They really want you to have a discussion with them. Let me see. 4s. And fours are my, even though ones kind of have a tendency to have some 4 tendencies in them. I really struggle with that aspect of being a 1, because 4s, I typically do not like 4s. I am not creative. I don't care what color you paint anything. That's just not something of me that I get. So that romantic and all that stuff that is wrapped up in that creative 4 is very hard for me to understand. So I really feel like the opposite is true of a 4. So if I'm trying to force a 4 to do things in order and do things the way I want it, that's probably really hard for them. And that's probably going to really, really push their buttons. A 9, again, if you place a 9 in any kind of level of conflict, you're just going to shut them down. You really shut them down. 5s are introverts. And it's funny, we talked about the Enneagram. You're not boxed into that number. You have some other subtypes. And my 3 highest, I'm very high in a 1. That's my highest number. My next one is a 6. And after a 6, I'm a 5 in those 3 orders.
Oh, you're in the head triad.
Yes, very much so. And so that 5, they're an introvert. And I am very introverted. If I can go out and be extroverted and interact with people, but I need some downtime. So if we're going to go out on a Friday night, I need Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday through Thursday to be at home. So for fives, they don't want to be in the spotlight. They do not want to be forced to go to that cocktail party after work. They don't want to interact with people near as much as maybe anybody who's a social type of a person. They just don't want to do it. Sixes, again, I can relate to that six. Their worst case scenario. If you don't give a six the opportunity to plan for everything that could happen or go wrong, you're probably going to really cause some anxiety there. They have to have an exit strategy. So, taking the time, I mean, the Enneagram, there's a lot to it, but taking the time to learn about the people who are on your team, not just leaders or not just people who are under you, but coworkers, people who are on the same level as you, so that you can communicate and interact better with them it's invaluable, and it'll take you very far if you just take the time to do it.
And also those pieces, like you were talking about, the things that annoy or set us off, right? They key us in, whatever language you're used to using, also can be that type's strong point, right?
Yes.
So it gives us a chance to take a breath, just recognize that's them and they're doing their thing. And it actually has some benefits to us that they are that way. Because no one gets to be the best type in an Enneagram, right?
They don't. No, definitely
there is no
not.
best type.
There isn't. My youngest son thinks he's the best type, and we're not really sure where he came from, because my husband, oldest son, and I, we all have one. We are all very strong and high in that one Enneagram. And then our oldest son, like I said, he is that 8. My husband is really a 3-2 type of a personality. Our youngest son is a 7, wing 8. He has no 1. He has no 2. I mean, we're like, what happened to
your
you?
family needed him.
Yeah. It's like, what in the world? And it's funny because he has kept us hopping from day one, and he's now 27. He's 28. He is 28 years old, and he has kept us hopping since day one.
No SOPs for him.
None whatsoever.
So let's talk about remote teamwork and the Enneagram and how you use that. Because it's a different dynamic working remotely with people in a team than it is face to face.
Yep, definitely. What we always do is when we have found somebody that's going to work with you and your team in a remote capacity, we always encourage them to, kind of learn a little bit about the Enneagram. If you want to read a book, The Road Back to You is something we really like to recommend because it's easy for people to read. We recommend that one to kind of get them started. And then they can learn a little bit quickly about each other. They can just read the sections on their type and their team members' types and kind of, have discussions and conversations around that and, start working together and utilizing what they've learned. But we also like to come alongside them and about every 4 weeks have check-ins and have specific questions for them. So what have you learned about each other? How have you been able to use what you learned to improve a relationship or improve communication or improve your work style and your effectiveness with each other? Because everybody's human. You're not going to like everybody in the world. You're not going to get along with everybody. There's no way. But if you can learn to work well with each other, regardless of whether you like them or not, that's what we're trying to accomplish. And by using the Enneagrams and being aware of your own strengths and your own weaknesses, as well as the other person, you're able to consciously then say, wait, I'm not going to do that because that'll set them off. I know that really upsets them when I do this. And I've, over the years, my husband, I've been married 30 plus years now. I know that when I say to him, you didn't make the bed right, I do not need to say that to him because he does not want to hear it. That upsets him. Because he's a 2. He's helping me. He made the bed for me. I should be appreciative. So I don't say anything anymore. I let it go.
That's so funny. I think my biggest benefits have been like pausing, shutting my mouth. My husband and I type the same, and I never knew that. I would have guessed we did not, although we have different tri-types. And but when I learned that, all of a sudden I thought, no wonder when I do X, I get this reaction, and it baffled me, right? I'm thinking, I don't get how you got there from here. But now it's so clear to me. I'm thinking, oh man, 20 years, 21 years. This would have helped.
Definitely.
But it just makes everything lighter. you know? And it's not like he has to understand all this stuff, although he's smart. He watches. He's also a 5 and he observes. So he goes, I get it. I know what you're doing. I don't care. It benefits me. But the bed's such a good example. He goes, you're really picky. I go, no. And I go, well, I just have a way I like.
Exactly. And you know what? My husband is the same way with his lawn. He was, when our boys were in high school, they were cutting the grass one day and he sat him down. He said, do you cut the grass to get it finished? Or do you cut the grass so that it looks good? They both looked at him like he was crazy. He said, to get it done. And he's like, no more. You can't cut the grass. You cannot cut the grass anymore. So
that's hilarious. But you know, thank goodness your kids didn't know about his type when they were young. Think how easy it would be to say, oh, it's cut, Dad. You just said cut it. You didn't say design it.
Exactly.
I'll take that task back. Sometimes you just have to go, you know what? It doesn't have to be my way. We just need to work together as a team. Yep. So you gave an example, though, like thinking remotely, and then I switched gears on you. Yep. So let's say we're bringing in, most of our team is on site, but we've got a few remote folks. How do we bring them into the team so they can best engage with us and we can benefit from them?
Yeah, we suggest, everybody's got Zoom fatigue, but we suggest Zoom. For team meetings, everybody that's in person, you can gather in a conference room and you can put whoever's remote up on a big screen and you can interact that way for in-person meetings and different things like that. As far as other communication, you can use Slack, all kinds of other little tools, text messaging, emails, just to loop people in so that everybody's in that constant communication. The company that my partner and I worked for a long time, that was a 100% remote company from day one. So that was like 2010 forward, remote company. And that's how we did it. We did it by way of Zoom. It started with Google Hangouts. It went to Slack. You're always text messaging people. You are really in constant communication so that the people in the team that you're working with, even though you physically aren't side by side, you really are side by side all day long, working and getting things done because you're communicating and you're using the tools that you've got to interact. Some other things too that you can do remotely as a team member or to just kind of encourage inclusion with your team. Don't make every Zoom meeting all about the meeting and about the day to day. It needs to be fun. Those people in the office, they're chit chatting with each other. They're kind of interacting, and those people at home, they're not. But have a time when you're just all on Zoom and you're all chit chatting. Something that we've seen some companies do once a week, one of their meetings, everybody has to come with a different piece of clothing on that you can see. So it's either got to be a shirt or a hat that says something about themselves. So it might be, the hat of a favorite football team or a basketball team or something that their child's involved in with them. Maybe their kids are in the band, and so they're wearing a proud band parent shirt or anything that is something about them. And then they have to, why are you wearing that? Tell us about that. Who's involved in that? So that you get to know your team. You have to be intentional when you're remote. If you're not intentional, it's more difficult. So you've got to do those things. And then you don't want to get Zoom fatigue. So you want to do them occasionally. You don't want to force people to have to come to all these meetings because it does get old. But doing things like that, something else I've seen a company do is deliver lunch to everybody at their home and then have a lunch meeting on Zoom, and everybody gets to eat their lunch that was delivered to their house. So in that aspect, like myself, we live in Middle Georgia on a lake. No one delivers to my house. So I would have to go fix my own lunch for a party like that. But
yeah, but it is really a respectful concept, right?
Yep.
There's ways to get around that. Like you're saying, you may just say, hey, order in whatever. And if they don't deliver you could figure out, you actually could probably say, here's what would help me.
Exactly.
Then the company could make that happen.
Yeah.
So one of the questions when you were talking earlier about the person you helped and said use emojis, when you've got all these different kinds of channels open, so you've got Slack and email and texting and what all, how do you balance for the team members, the fives, those of us who go too much information.
Mm-hmm.
How do you coach folks to gauge and make sure that it's not just dumping stuff because they didn't want to think it through, like what really matters?
Yeah, that takes practice, and that takes time for team members to figure it out. And it's also teaching the fives, or the people that don't need the information overload, to communicate and step up and say, hey, is this really necessary? Can we send this out? Can we do this by way of email? We've all worked for a company that has sent out a company-wide email that says, hey, everybody's leaving too early. Stop leaving too early. And all of us ones are thinking, I'm not leaving early. What did I do? Don't communicate that to everyone. Communicate it to those who are leaving early. So if you don't communicate to the right people, it isn't going to work. So that's a two-way street as far as, information overload and not enough information. It's the same thing with the tools, because I agree. I don't like all the different things coming at me. If we're going to use Google Hangouts, if we're going to use Zoom chat, if we're going to use Slack, or we're just going to use good old text messaging, pick one and stick with it. If it needs an attachment, in my book, send it in an email. But come up with a policy for when do you use email, when do you use text, and when do you use Slack, and then stick by it.
Well, and I also think it's incumbent upon the sender to think through the purpose of the message, right?
Very much so.
And I really appreciate when people just say, they'll tell me at the beginning, this is for your information. You don't need to do anything with it. Then I just go, great. I know it's in my email if I have to go back to it.
Exactly.
I don't worry about it.
Yep.
But when it's like you don't get that till the very bottom of a 2-page email, you're going, okay, that was disrespectful.
Exactly. I had to reach out to someone that I work closely with. He was giving me hiring instructions and recruiting instructions, and he isn't a recruiter and he isn't a hirer. And he literally, it was a 2-page email, and I emailed back and I said, I got this. I've been doing it for a while. I know everything you told me. Your 2-page email was completely unnecessary. He emailed back. He goes, okay, got it. Thanks. And he hasn't done it since. So,
which goes to clear communication helps us all. Yeah.
Yes.
That is the takeaway, and we don't have to be afraid to talk. I mean, I can tell. The thing I love about Zoom and my team meetings is I can tell when I say something that I spent time in my head on this. My communication of it is a shorthand, and it doesn't always make sense, not to other people. So I watch facial expressions, and then I go, okay, I'm pausing. Did you get any of that? Well, kind of. Can you tell us this? But it's okay, because I know that's a weakness for me.
Yep.
So it's, but you don't get there without having conversations.
No, you don't. Another tool that it's exactly the same. If you're talking about processes and SOPs and how to do something. Some people need a list. They need it in a Word doc. They need a checklist. First do this, second, third, fourth. Other people, they want to see it and they need a video. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Loom.
I do. I have.
So Loom is a tool you can quickly just show somebody on a computer screen. And it's funny because there are Enneagram types that do not like Looms. And
which types? Tell me, because I use that and I want to know.
Maybe it's a personal preference, but I honestly just prefer the email. Just bam, 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 tell me what to do because I got the rest. I don't need to sit there and watch the video and watch you hum and haw and search. And, so to me, it's a given. Give me the bullets. I got it. Go. I just need this short version. So, but that's another tool that you have to figure out. When is Loom more effective? When is Loom easier? I got asked a question this morning by somebody, and a Loom was the quickest way to give her the answer. And that's what I did. Even though I hate it, I knew that's what I needed to use. So it's just another tool and a way to communicate remotely that you've got to use it when you need to use it, but don't overuse it.
It's important to really pay attention to what's going to benefit the receiver, right? Because that's kind of the point of communicating.
Yep.
So you have a saying that I want to ask you to tell us more about. You say, be a Winnie the Pooh, not an Eeyore. And I've just actually recently re-listened to Winnie the Pooh. So tell me what you mean by that.
Definitely. So if everybody's ever remembers anything about Winnie the Pooh, Christopher Robin, and Eeyore, Eeyore was always, woe is me. The glass wasn't, poor Eeyore, the glass wasn't even half full. It was just bone dry. Everything in his life was terrible. His tail was never attached. Everybody, you know, he was a downer. And Winnie the Pooh might have just been so happy-go-lucky and on top of the world, without a care in the world. And to him, the glass was always overflowing, regardless of what it is. And regardless of how you really feel on the inside, life is easier for everybody if you just look at it as that glass is overflowing. And if you look at it as that glass is bone dry, you're always going to be woe is me. And it's hard to get motivated and it's hard to move along. So we always just say, don't look at it as half full or half empty. Look at it as half full. Look at the positive. There's a positive in everything. And, you know, when you think back to Winnie the Pooh, all those characters, I mean, I know they're cartoons, but they were all a different number on the Enneagram. We could probably figure out which one each of them was, but they never excluded Eeyore. Even though he probably drove them all nuts with his Debbie Downer, they never excluded him, and they included him every single time. So, you know, you always want to be that Winnie the Pooh so that you are including everybody. You're aware of everybody and what their type is and what is most beneficial to them and how you can work effectively with them, but you don't ever want to exclude them because of how they are. So that's kind of what we mean by that. Be a Winnie the Pooh and not an Eeyore, is be that all inclusive. Winnie the Pooh didn't care who you were or what you were like. He was going to include you on everything he did.
It's all about having fun.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Experiencing everything. So I have a couple short questions. What lights you up most about the work that you're doing today?
That's really easy. We started working with a client right after Thanksgiving, the week right after Thanksgiving, which that's the worst time to start working with somebody anyway, because, you know, it's the holidays. And and especially in this job market, we searched and searched and searched. And for a job that we normally get about 100 applications, I think we had 10. And we submitted them and they were okay with the people we submitted, but it wasn't, you know, they weren't grinning from ear to ear. They were like, wow, we're not wowed. So we said, you know what? You don't have to worry about it. It's Christmas. Don't worry about it. We're going to take this week off. And then as soon as Christmas is over, we're going to repost it. We're going to see what we get. So we did just that. We reposted it the Sunday after Christmas and hit the ground running the week after Christmas. And one of the first people that I interviewed, my partner did, or actually I did the phone screen and my partner did the Zoom interview. We do both aspects of that before we pass it on to a client. And when I got off the phone, I called my partner and said, you get her on a Zoom tomorrow, because in this job market, we cannot take a chance on losing somebody. You get her on Zoom tomorrow and then you send her the next day, because I know this is the one. And there was just something about her. She checked every box. She had the best person, she was just perfect. All aspects of it was perfect. When we sent her to the client, they had the same reaction. And it was two people. It was two business partners working together. They both had to work with her. They both had to like her. And she lit both of them up. Like, she checked both of their boxes. So that's what does it, is when the client comes back to us and said, wow, you were right. This is it. I'm so excited and I can't wait to move forward.
So listeners, if you're needing to recruit, I want you to think about that. Paige identified her happy spot as you being able to say,
Yes.
wow. And we know that feeling. Like, we meet someone and we're thinking, where have you been? Right?
Exactly.
We want you. So that's super. Do you have anything that to offer folks if they go to your website? Is there anything they can take away?
Yep.
Can you share that with us?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have on our website, we have a free resources page. So if you go to werecruitwell.com and you click on free resources, we have lots of different things you can get there for different ideas. There's some creative ways to motivate a team. There's an SOP plan. There's one that we like to use a lot with our clients. We call it 3 Steps to a Clean Plate, where you're just really listing everything. You can print these off. You can use them online, but you're listing everything you do. What don't you have to do and what can you give away? And it's a quick way of delegating, of finding things that you're ready to give away to somebody else that you don't ever want to do again. I think there's about 10 to 15 tools that we have there that really you can find just about anything you're looking for. If you need a resource to just kind of help you get started or help you get started hiring in this virtual remote space.
Super. I did check it out. You do have a lot of very generous, useful resources there. Paige, what's the best way besides your website? Do you have a preferred way for people to reach out to you or your partner?
Yep, they can reach out to us at hello@werecruitwell.com. That's usually the quickest way. We both monitor that email inbox. We also have a virtual assistant of our own who helps us monitor that as well, as we can't hire virtual assistants for people if we don't have one. So
hypocritical.
Exactly. So we have Amy who also helps us do a lot of the behind the scenes things, who's monitoring that inbox as well. But that is the easiest and quickest way to get a hold of us.
Perfect. Okay, No Labels, No Limits podcast group. Let's remember the quote, be a Winnie the Pooh, not an Eeyore. And Paige, I want to thank you so much for taking time to be with us on the No Labels, No Limits podcast. I wish you all the best in this year and well beyond, because your work makes all of our work better.
Thanks, Sarah.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic vision coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. So please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Until next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.